So this is a follow-up meeting to 2 weeks ago. My name's John Rose. I'm with a company called Radiant, and we're part of a much bigger company called Rayonier. And the last presentation was too packed and ran too long to really get a quality Q&A. And so the idea of tonight was let's just have a session that's just nothing but Q&A. So everybody has a chance to ask questions or make comments. So a couple of opening remarks. First, when we do Q&A, I want to make sure it is balanced as we can make it between, folks that are just don't like the idea and folks that are more supportive. So we're actually going to ask people that are, generally opposed. You can, be against that wall, and we're going to alternate. Because last time I got complaints that we were unbalanced. So I don't want to be unbalanced. Okay? Yeah, I am a little unbalanced, but you don't have to be. So. We're going to do that, and rather than a typical Q&A where you speak from the mic, I'd like you to come up to the stage and join us. Okay? So you can speak to us directly. To my left is Scott Smith from the YMCA, Charlie Davis, YMCA, Chris Galbraith, Kingston Rotary, and Mark Libby. Okay? A couple takeaways from the last meeting and some points that clearly I did not get through or I did not make clear enough. You might recall a slide where I said there was going to be 3 steps to the process. And the first step was just to see whether or not there's enough interest in this North Kitsap United concept to justify moving forward to step number 2. Because step number 2 is going to take, it's going to be costly. We have to hire wetlands people, we have to hire land planners, we're going to hire traffic engineers, and we're going to do all of the pre-development studies that happen when you do a project. But if 90% of the people said, we hate the idea, I'm not going to, I wouldn't ask my company to take another step. So it was strictly idea, and you could consider it kind of a market study. And if nobody liked it, we're done. Second point that wasn't abundantly clear, apparently. Nobody at Rayonier or Radiant is putting me up to this. Timber company, has an idea that we're going to get a Y and a rotary, and we're going to laugh our way to the bank. It's just not like that. So this is my idea because I think I've always tried to find a way for the community to benefit from the projects that we do. I've always tried. I haven't always succeeded. But having access to all this timberland for a 30-year career has enabled me to think of ideas, frankly, nobody else at the company would have thought of. And now you have 7 square miles of park. That wasn't a company-driven idea. That was my staff and I saying, if we're leaving, what if we leave it better? So that's all this is. The company does not need this project. It does not need this partnership. I don't need the partnership. It's not my kids. It's not my kids. My kids are gone. It's, for a lot of you, your kids are too old. This is going to take 5, if this happens, this is 3 to 5 and more like 5 years before you would ever see anything. And a lot of kids that are in the system right now, they'll be gone. They're going to be gone. Did they just... sometimes, Lynn, you just leave the door open too long. And so it's not a have to. Another point to be clear that I don't think people got. We already have a plan. The property's already subdivided. It's 400 acres. It's privately owned. And we don't have to do this. We're happy. If it's just going to be, severe unhappiness, then we'll just do our 20, we got 20 lots. We will do all those roads that we have to do. And we will sell 20 lots to 20 families, and we're done. And that is so much easier than being barbecued. That is so much easier than being barbecued on Facebook. And I hear the commentary, but I don't think many folks would find this fun at all.
We don't. We have laws.
And we do, that's right. And we're not doing that either. That's something we're not going to do this time. We're not going to yell at our panelists. And that's part of it. Nope. No. You're not doing it. Or that man there is going to help you out.
That's fine.
Well, if you have to yell.
No, I want you to see me being held, pulled out by cops. That's what I want you to create.
Sir, will that help any of us make our point?
I'm not going to, we're just not going to have a meeting if you're going to yell at us. We didn't come here to get yelled at. And if you don't, if that's whether you want to do it, that's fine.
Clear. That's one man. Clear.
All right, but I can't have a meeting with this guy yelling. We're not doing it.
Repeat it yourself 7 times.
And I will repeat it until the message gets through. So, sir, if there's can you wait till we do Q&A? Thank you.
Just everybody be civil. Everybody be civil.
We're getting to it. We're going to get to it, but we're going to say the things that need to be said first. Yeah, so the next time we get together, we will have done many studies, and we will share every single study with you. The other point that I wanted to make is, I've done this kind of work for 30 years. I've done zoning, I've done rezoning, I've done developments, I've done master plans, I've done little projects. And when I was younger, what we would do is just come to a public meeting and have the site plan all done. Here's the lots, here's the roads, here's all the things. And then I would just catch enormous heck from the audience because I hadn't consulted with people before we drew up the plans. And what I found, sir, you're going to get your chance. What I found is whether I maximize your ability to input early and often, or I do the site plan, it's still going to cause the same unhappiness. So I'm just choosing to involve you early and often because I think it's the right thing to do. So with that, and gentlemen, do you have anything at all? Let's get the show rolling. So, how about a show of hands so we can help organize this, so we have an organized meeting? Folks that don't like the idea, because that's all you know is an idea. Let's see a show of hands. I just want to get a count. Okay, sir, give me a shot here at having a meeting, okay? You're going to have a shot at coming up and asking me directly. Please give me a shot at that and not be out of turn. Folks who are more positively inclined. All right. So here's what we'll do. I'm going to ask for a negative and a positive. We're going to go and alternate. There is no other way to do it that I know, so that it's even. And if somebody goes out of turn, you're going to lose a turn. So please don't play a game. Why don't we start with folks? You can line up. I'm not calling on you individually, and so somebody who is disinclined, doesn't like this concept, and I absolutely, Emery, want you to come up soon, and you can come up right now.
I'm coming up in favor of a sports complex. I'm all for a sports complex.
All right.
All right. John and I play music together at open mics. He's been to my bar. Chris Gilbreth, right? Just to correct the crowd, it's not Galbraith. Gilbreth.
That was my fault.
All right.
Misinformed, John.
This is my
He's from New York.
middle school math teacher, so you can tell you I'm not good with numbers. I don't need it. Can you guys hear me? Cool. So, all right, sure, I'll use my. My name's Emery. I grew up in this area. I went to North Kitsap High School. Played sports here. I have a 3-year-old daughter, so she will almost certainly benefit from any sort of sports complex. I appreciate you being here, John. Appreciate you guys being here. I don't have any questions for you. Questions for Rotary. How can we move this conversation forward with stakeholders who are likely in this room, like the Port Gamble Slalom tribe, the Squamish tribe, whose land we're on originally, the Paulsbo, City of Paulsbo, Kitsap County, Kitsap PUD, other civic groups, sports groups that would benefit from this? How can we do this conversation without for-profit entities, non-profit entities that make a lot of money with for-profit entities, and move this in a positive way?
Thank you. Yeah, real quickly. My name is Chris Gilbreth. I taught in this district and coached in this district and in the public for over 40 years. So, I mean, he says he can't do math, but he seems to be doing just fine right now. So, in fact, back there is a area that I used to be my classroom. I taught here for a while. So, but one of the things that I wanted to say is that this isn't a new concept. This is something, you know, John has dreamed of it, but also many Rotarians have too. And I think going back as far, Walt could probably confirm this for me. 1995, I think there was a proposal, a study looking at something like this. But one of the things I think needs to be made clear is that when the Rotary started looking at trying to do this, we started looking at a number of pieces of property, including those within the urban growth area. And there was nothing that would come close to being able to fit the needs of what we need. And so it wasn't until we came across the two groups that are sitting up here along with us that we actually had a hope of trying to find a piece of property that was appropriate.
Could I just pause right there and ask a question
Just,
due to that?
actually,
Okay.
just let me finish.
Return to that point.
Okay, and I want to say that Mark Libby has actually studied this extensively as far as the amount of land and the type of land that we need, and I think he'll be responding to that. He has a great deal of experience working within parks and trails and so forth, where most of my experience has been working within youth sports and so forth. As to your question, yes, we do have other groups that we will be working with. We have to. We know that in Kingston, it took a large group of people, organizations and so forth, coming together to actually make the village green a possibility. And it took a fair amount of time, but it also took companies too. One of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be writing all types of grants that are going to go to profits and non-profits, all sorts of different organizations. For us to realistically be able to carry this off would be impossible unless we work with a variety of different organizations. Some of them are profit and some of them are non-profit. Okay? Did you want to?
So one specific question, when did this marriage happen? Because you guys had a project that you started off thinking of on your own, correct? And then you guys developed land together. When did the conversation start between the two entities? Because like this auditorium was...
John, about how long ago did you first speak with?
It was no more, so I had a conversation with Kingston Rotary no more than 3 months ago. I had a conversation with the Kingston Rotary no more than 3 months ago.
And that was them asking you if you would come speak.
I heard them speak, and I contacted them, and I said, it's going to be a really hard thing. I'm willing to forward the idea. We've been talking with the YMCA since 2007 about this idea, and And so they said, well, we'd appreciate coming on board, and because you guys know how to do projects, and we don't have a place.
And then specific to my question with the stakeholders, to me the most important two would be the S'Klallam tribe and the Suquamish tribe. I don't know if everyone here knows the history, but Rainier, Pope Resources, actually had representatives signing on the Treaty of Point No Point over 150 years ago, which is a cool part of this history, but also important to know that they've had a very long history with the S'Klallam tribe. And their lack of involvement here, to me, seems problematic as somebody that appreciates their leadership.
Well before I went public, I communicated with Chairman Sullivan. I went to see Chairman Forsman. I've invited them both, but I can't make them come here. Right? No, I invited them both to be part of this, and they said, we'll let you know if we want to get involved. But I can't make people get involved.
Well, I think that answers my question.
Okay?
I'm good.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for correcting my name, too. Appreciate that.
Can we have somebody from the positive side?
Is that negative? I think that was positive.
That was positive? All right. I know he has to leave, if you can let him. So, Bill, why don't you?
You can let her go first. It's fine. I got it.
Okay. All right. Hold on just a second.
That's totally fine. I'm gonna check.
And what's your name? Yeah, what's your name?
My name is Robin Salthouse. I live in the Kingston area. I moved to this area because of the open space and the natural beauty that exists. Little background. This area is planning to put 226 additional homes in Port Gamble through the Radiant project with a 100-room hotel. There's also 600 homes being built in Arborwood. And probably other developments around Paulsville that I haven't even mentioned. So my question is, how and when are residents, especially children, going to benefit from this zoning change with this increased housing density request, which, by the way, was put in place at least by the beginning of the year. So Radiant had asked for this rezoning earlier in the year, wait longer than that. And by the way, when we had this meeting, my daughter, who was visiting from out of town, was actually in the forest, and she did see children there. She saw probably close to 20 kids. She thinks with coaches mountain biking. I'm all for children. I think it's wonderful to see the children using our natural resources, playing ball. So please understand, I'm not against any of this. But it took, from what I understand, close to 15 years for the Village Green project, from concept to build to get done. If we keep adding housing density, how is this ever going to benefit our children? And me, for that matter.
Thank you. So all of our growth is controlled by a master zoning law called the Growth Management Act. So the growth in Arborwood, the growth in Paulsville, all of these homes can only move forward if they comply with the law. Also, one thing I wanted to mention earlier, somebody saw a comment where someone was speculating we were proposing 400 homes on this project, and we're not.
Well, you know why that is. Because you had a slide that talked about cluster.
Right. Yeah, but
That's where that comes from.
wherever it came from, we could not ever do under any law 400 homes there. So we applied for a rezone. The reason we did it is because it was a deadline, and we had to get the application in before the deadline. So what we've asked for is to go from 20 homes to 80 homes on that land. So, but everything is now managed through the Growth Management Act because the idea is to not have growth running rampant and to have it planned. And so in our rezone, we don't need sports fields to proceed forward and take our chance with the rezone. We don't need a why. Our idea was, we're gonna cluster and create a bunch of open space. There's a chance for these guys to get open space and land without it costing much. So, but ma'am, I do need to move on to other course.
But my question wasn't answered. How long is he to anticipate this take, especially when it took almost 15 to 15 for the village green to be built?
We didn't hear the question. What was the question?
The question is, how long is this all gonna take? The village green took 15 years. Is this gonna take another 15 years, or how long is it gonna take?
Yeah, I don't have a good crystal ball for that. Obviously, we have the need for more sports fields today. And one of the reasons why we're looking at this project is it's moving forward now. Whereas if we were to go out and try to find the land, bring in all the infrastructure and the roads and stuff, it would take us even longer. I think we're hopeful that we'll be breaking ground in a few years, and you maybe heard John say, 3 to 5 years. That's not to say that we can't, in the interim, do some improvements to some of the existing fields. If you were here on the first night, the 27th, you saw the muddy conditions that we have that make some of our fields unplayable. Our Rotary is committed, and my Parks and Trails committee that I also work on is committed to getting fields for the kids to play on as soon as we can. And we will be looking for opportunities to improve things in the interim until the new complex can be built.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir?
Yes.
Excuse me?
Yes. So is that the next category you want?
Here again, sure.
Can you make sure people use the microphone?
Yeah, we'll do it. Yes, we'll do that. Okay. Please use the mic.
My name's James Stowner. I've been here going on 40 years. Mr. Gilbreth was my math teacher. 3 plus 2 is still 4, yeah. Okay. So, but the math here does not work with radio. How can Rotary look at all of us and say, we're crawling into bed with big corporate trying to pull a 2.0 gig harbor and turn what was lots of open land down there that they had into Kingston 2.0 and clog our roads and turn us into a roundabout central. Bond is not big enough. 3 hooks around. Hey, you want to give some land to Rotary to build something for a sports complex? Great. Leave the rest as 20. Sell them off. That's simple. Because otherwise, there's going to be no feedback. And as a property owner, the rezoning laws and the time and effort that you've already gone through does not happen. And the fact that it's under your name with DCD, as a contractor, been looking at it. It's like, call it what it is. Don't hide in the shadows. Don't make backroom deals, front and center. But yeah, kids absolutely need something. But maybe it's cheaper to buy them a bunch of Xboxes or tablets, because that's all they're going to need in 10 years. If you have a good
So there was a reference made to our Gig Harbor project. Completely different project. That was inside city limits. That project was urban. This land is rural, and we're not proposing to be urban at all.
Or give us at least a cost of pieces, would you?
Oh, I don't have a lifetime for that, but I appreciate it. Next, please.
I'll pick on him during that if it gets to the SEPA process. Have no fear. I'm a cost guy. So my name's Bill Webb. I live on Minder Road. Some of you who've lived here for a long time probably been to my house because I own the old Minder farm. I bought it from Carolyn back in 2005. So I'm literally across the street from where this development's going to happen. And if it's going to impact anybody, it's going to impact me. I want to thank you guys for getting involvement early in this. I'm going to pick on you during SEPA. Have no fear for that. That being said, when I was younger, I lived in Bellevue, Washington, and back when Bellevue and Redmond were connected by one street light, quite literally. And I watched development happen there. like this where things were developed on a 20 acres to one house development, right where things like the Microsoft campus sits and where Bell Red Road intersects, which used to have one stoplight, like I said, within about 5 miles, and now it's got about 50 stoplights in that 5-mile area. Development's going to happen. It's only through the grace of Pope Resources that we've been able to use that open space ourselves for the last 30 or 40 years. And my wife and I have raised 2 kids there. We've been here for almost 25 years. We use the heck out of those trails. They didn't have to let us. And I guarantee when this stuff goes into public ownership, or private ownership rather, we're not going to have access to it anymore. So I guess what my question for you is, in looking at the rough development planning, how much of this are you guys going to leave for public access, and how much of it is going to be taken up with things like housing developments and private access? Because that's
A great question. That's a great question. So you can't hold me to it because we don't have wetland studies. I don't know how it's all going to turn out. But let's just say you had 80 homes and they were 1.5 acres each. So that's 120 acres that's going to be dedicated to residential. So that leaves 280 acres of open space. It may not turn out, it could be more, it could be less, but the idea is when you cluster, if we can make that work, the majority of the land is not going to be owned by private individuals. And that's what made the opportunity, I thought, for these guys to, be in a good location. And so that's it.
So the other, I have a couple more. Well, like I said, I'll beat up on you about the traffic issues and things like that during the SEPA process, because that will come up, obviously. But I assume you've looked at various development, or at least preliminary looked in terms of GMA. At least I have. Okay, and I can tell you that in my review of GMA, and those of you who don't know what I've done for a living for the last 40 years, I've had a lot of experience with GMA. I know that the next guy to say negative already knows this about me, but it does appear to me that by clustering the way you're talking about and by leaving 60 or 70% of it, you meet multiple goals that are GMA. And with, I don't remember what the number was from last time, because I was pretty trepidatious. I told you that before I showed up last time. But 70, 80,000 people coming in. Specifically, Goal 9 of the Growth Management Act says to leave the majority of the space if you redevelop and under public access. So I want to commend you on that. I think that's a great idea. Dropping the urban sprawl, I think this project will struggle a little bit with it, but by clustering it and leaving 2/3 or 3/4 of it open, I think you're going to be okay. I actually hate this project. It's across the street from me. It scares the hell out of me. But I'm not sure I have a question on that. I'll have a prepared statement that I'll give you guys later. It's going to get developed, and I don't want Skittleville Part 2 across the street from my house. So I guess all I can say is please get this thing done and get it done sooner than later. I wish we had a YMCA up here. My dad's on the board of directors of the YMCA in Silverdale. We aren't members because it's just kind of a pain in the butt. So we go to the CrossFit gym up here and we use the pool here. But I'd really like to see that. I'm not sure I'm psyched to have it directly across the street from my house, but I will have grandchildren at some point, so I probably will. So anyway, I want to commend you guys on your efforts. I'll give you an official record of that later. Keep me posted on these things. And if there is a way to pre-SEPA give you guys formal comments, please let me know.
This certainly will be. That's good.
Rick Eckert. I have been to Bill's house, so.
Sorry about that.
He talked me into running for school board, so wait him. So my first question, I got two. Well, no, we'll go to this first. So Bill alluded to the 60 to 70,000 people growth in Kitsap County. That's what the GMA requires under the comp plan. You had a slide on that. What was kind of disingenuous though is that's Kitsap County. So we know Poulsbo is required to take 5,500 of that. So what you should share with the folks is what the other urban areas are required to take, because that's Bremerton, that's Port Orchard, and that's Bainbridge Island. So out of the remaining 72,000, how much is already going to be allotted in those cities?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I think it's something I could bring to another meeting. It's a good
Okay.
question.
Because when you put out, well, the county's grown by 77,000, a lot of that is already required to be in the city limits of the 4 cities. So by saying, well, the county's grown anyway, let's go. Let's be honest now, that's got to be in the urban areas first. So my second question is for the why. So, as you said, you've been talking to the why for a lot of years. So the city of Poulsbo's been talking to you for a lot of years too. They've been asking you for a why for almost 6 years now. They commissioned this study that you talked about. They commissioned a study to have the why in the city. Up at Ojava, where the PERC project is now. The reason that PERC project is there now is because you guys told them, based on that study, that it was not financially supportable by the YMCA to put another Y in Kitsap County, in North Kitsap. So what I want to know is, what changed? What has changed in the last 5 years that now YMCA is financially supportable in a more rural, less developed, less infrastructure, more remote area than right next to the college, right next to the highway, with sewer, with water, with a bus transit center? How is it better there than with the area you told the city no?
Thanks, man.
That they still want, by the way.
Yeah,
But the city would turn the PERC back into a Y today if you said yes.
Yeah, and again, I don't feel like we're leaving Paulsboro with this. It feels like it's more open to a lot more people, for one. But I was attending those meetings on Zoom during COVID, and we never, to be honest, I didn't feel like there was a YMCA happening. Now, we were in conversation prior to that, but I never heard that. But it wasn't like we're leaving Paulsboro or that we're saying we're exclusive to another area. We're exploring what is out in North Kitsap.
That's not answering my question. Why was it no in the city, but now it's yes outside the city? What has changed financially? Because the reason that the city was given by the Y to say no to that lot, to doing it at Ojava, was that you could not financially support it. So what has changed that you can now support it out there when you don't have a government entity supporting you building it, that you now can do it? What has changed?
So we need, first of all, we needed to own up to the fact that we should have contacted the city of Poulsbo before we got on stage here, okay? We own that. We own that, absolutely. What happened in 2019 is we went through a strategic planning process where we already had 3 capital projects on our plate that we had to fundraise for, okay? And then those got stalled during COVID, and we just now found a way forward coming out of COVID, how to pick that up and move those forward. Those are for projects that we're already committed to, okay? We saw this as an opportunity because it was, it's a larger piece of land. We can do fields here, we can do camps potentially here, depending on what the community ends up wanting. We also see, to what Charlie mentioned before, we weren't necessarily seeing a way forward yet, but we didn't feel like we were abandoning Poulsbo with this effort because this would be more inclusive to North Kitsap communities, including Poulsbo. So it's not like anything changed.
But you're building a competing project now. That's what you're doing. Because the city's still going to build the Poulsbo Event and Recreation Center with the county, and now you're building a competing project. So you are. And so I'll go down and you can finish answering, but here's what I'll say is, based on the numbers you just gave Bill, so here's what I would say. build those properties you said at 80, and you have that whole big project, amount of land left, 200 plus acres left. So now commit, whether you rezone or not, give those 200 acres to the Y and let them build their camps. Commit legally whether you get your zone or not. That will make people trust you. Without the
Okay, we'll take somebody from this side of the room.
Hello, my name is Lynn Shorn, and I kind of would have walked down the middle because I have some questions. The questions are, have you thought of partnering with the school districts? Because the school, when I first heard about the Rotary project at a Rotary meeting, I went to the school district to find out the contact information of partnering with the schools because the schools' fields are inadequate. I coached soccer years ago at the middle school, and I would have at least one sprained ankle a practice because of the holes and the bad shape of the middle school fields. So that was one thing. Partnerships, when you're in projects, are key. Just saying. So that's one question I have. Second question is, I've been involved, lived in Kitsap County since 1991, was part of the campaign to raise money for the 3,500 acres of Port Gamble Forest Heritage Park. I have helped write 8 grants, Forest Service, State, Washington Conservation, saving land, 200 acres for the Ride Park, which we were able to save the land and the trees. Trails, parks, North Kitsap Heritage Park. So it takes a long time. It took from 2007 to 2017 to get the money to buy the park. So just so you know, it's a long process, takes partnerships of multiple fundraising efforts. And if people aren't behind you, because they're gonna reach to you guys to pitch in, because that's what we had to do. 756 acres of trees were purchased through nonprofit, our forest fund, blah, 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 blah. So I am a mountain biker, I am a hiker, I'm a dog walker, but I also had kids. My daughter was raised at Kingston High School, played for Kingston High School soccer. So I've been around, I hate to say it, as long as I have, but questions are, I was part of the grant writing for the Ride Park. We were ranked 3rd. 2nd was ranked Poulsbo Sports Center. So that was allotted 2 point something million dollars. Where is that money? So that goes to somebody's question about where is that money? Poulsbo has not done anything that I've seen in the time period that we applied for the grant. We now have an open mountain bike ride park. We were ranked 3rd at $1.6 million of a grant. So it takes time, but you also have to be ready, community to put your words in, which you're doing now. But question is, Poulsbo, 2nd ranked public facility district money. Do you know where it is?
Honestly, we don't have any idea where any of the grant money is. We don't know really anything about the details on where things are.
So that is me then going to public facility district and saying, where's the money? Or going to Poulsbo City Council and saying, where's the money? Which is what I do. Where's the money?
So can I just add one thing? So Lynn and I have worked long and hard, and she and Mark and the rest of the trail folks have worked long and hard. When we came up with the String of Pearls idea and all the Port Campbell Forest, it was just like this. It was an idea, but we didn't know it would be, we didn't know how it would turn out. Because you got to put your oar in the water and then you're going to pivot. I am totally open to different ways to get these guys a home. We're not locked into one way. We pivoted in 3 directions when we did that. But the one thing we needed, or none of it would have happened, is collaboration between 30 organizations. Private sector, our company put $1 million towards Port Gamble Heritage Park. So private money isn't dirty. It can actually help. And the patience my board gave me to let the community, it was supposed to take 24 months. It took 10 years. And there's not enough money and philanthropy money in the universe to save all the land. The only way really quality things are going to be happening is if we all find a way to work together. We are open to the port, to the school district, to both tribes. If somebody wants to help, I mean, this is not easy. It's going to take many organizations pulling in the same direction. I can't do it. I just had the idea. So, you know, that's what it takes. The volunteers that put the String of Pearls together, that filled out those grants, that went to community meetings, it was tens of thousands of volunteer hours. I didn't do that. They did it because they saw an opportunity. That's all this is. We don't have to do it. If you don't like it, let's not do it. No problem. But if you want to do it, then we got to pull together. And I'm indifferent, really.
So another comment real quick is, my career is as a physical therapist. I need my community to be moving in nature for their physical health and their mental health. So I am going to hit these guys hard to integrate the Sound to Olympics Trail, which is part of what I've already been working on since 2007. So I need my community to move through our North Kitsap, not on the roads. Not on the roads. So that's my agenda. Just so you're clear, my agenda.
Okay, yeah, I want to clarify one thing. It's not like we have not spoken to the school district. They got contacted the same day that everything else came out as far as the Rotary looking at this happening. Now, some people get excited more quickly than others. Some, have certain priorities that they have, educating kids and so forth. It doesn't mean that down the road that won't be happening. And Rotarians and so forth have done an awful lot of stuff trying to support the school system, whether it be fields things or lights, which the school district didn't come through, but Rotary did, and a number of other areas that are benefiting the schools. But we don't expect everyone to jump on it at the same time. People have to look and see, is this what I want to be a part of? And if it is, then we'll be able to join and make those coalitions happen. Thank you.
How's your month been? Better? So my name is Brooke Hammett, and my son was 6 months old at the very first community meeting we had about saving the land out in the Port Gamble trails. I remember him being a little car seat carrier and meeting a lot of the folks with soon-to-be North Kitsap Trails Association at that meeting, but being a brand new mom with a tiny baby, I wasn't signing up for anything, wasn't sleeping, so that was a little too much for me. My husband and I own the local running store in town, and we've been very lucky to have had a great relationship with Pope Resources, formerly in Port Gamble, to be able to put on running events out at those trails in conjunction with all of the mountain biking groups and other users. When my son got old enough, I volunteered with NKTA, and I was one of their vice presidents for several years. And I have been using those trails probably 3 times a week since 2001, maybe. So not only is it my home away from home and my favorite place on the planet, but my son has literally grown up there. It's where he learned how to ride a bike. He's now Lynn. Where did Lynn go? Dude, he rode the pro line last week. I'm scared. I don't want to watch it. It's 50 feet, okay? So our family, I can't tell you how much this land means to us personally. My 495th career, currently I'm a real estate agent, so you probably expect me to get up here and be like, yay, development, woo, houses, let's go. But we've got to start putting a premium on our rural forests. And it's not a price tag. There's not a price tag. I've been using the South End since the ride park opened because that's the quiet end. I have nothing against mountain bikers. I love watching them, but it's important to me to be out there in the forest where it's quiet, and this project would ruin that. And I'm getting emotional. I'm not going to try to get emotional, but that's what it means to me, okay? I know things have gotten ugly, and John and I have worked together in the past with NKTA. We've always had a great relationship. If I had $1 for every time I defended you or had your back, I would be able to buy some of that property you have for sale up there. Seriously, John's been a great partner and an ally. I think that having a YMCA in North Kitsap is a great idea. My son goes to YMCA. He would love to be able to drive his truck 2 minutes down the road, because we're up on the top of Port Campbell Road Northeast, and just go right to the Y. But he's opposed to this location too. I cannot tell you what kind of change it's going to make for the solitude, the peace and quiet, the wildlife impact that something like this will have on that South End. And I just ask that we look past the price tags and past the zoning, and we start to put a premium on these places, because once they're developed, we will never get them back again. And the last thing I want to say is this. I know you've been raked over the coals, okay? And I understand that does not feel good. There's people in this room right now that I used to work with that don't want to look me in the eye either, because we're not seeing eye to eye on this. But let's all be professional. Let's be adults. This isn't personal, it's business, right? I think that the tone that was set at that first meeting could have been a lot better. I feel like, I know that there was some hostility towards you guys and there was some shouting and whatnot, but I also felt like the phrasing was like, well, if you like kids, then you'll support this. And if you don't support this project, then either you don't like kids or you don't have kids. I have a child. He goes to the Y. He rides his mountain bike. He does sports. He does not want this project in that location, okay? This is not about hating kids. So I would ask that maybe we all rise to a little bit of a higher level of keeping this professional and remembering that this is business and not make pot shots. But I felt like a lot of us that were against this idea at that first meeting were being mocked. And this is our neighborhood. We live in North Kitsap. This is right in my backyard. And I just don't think it was appreciated. Maybe we didn't get off to the right foot. So I would just ask everybody to maybe stop with the personal jabs and comments and try to keep this a little bit more civil.
I would like to second that, and I'm right on board with it. Absolutely.
Hi. My name is Melinda. My name is Melinda Wedgwood. I'm a former reporter for the North Kitsap Herald and a former environmental planner. Most importantly, right now, though, I'm a part of the mountain bike community, recovering from knee surgery. So I'm out at the Heritage Park almost daily, riding my bike. And I do understand that this is your property and you get it developed, right? I get that. What I would like to just ask of you, is there a way on the western edge of your property that you could try to leave some of that forest and the existing trails? So there's a couple trails there that are known throughout the whole region. They're famous, derailed and bobsled, right? And you would have all of us in tears, plus we would make sure we would never send any business your way because we'd be so pissed off, right? If something happened to those precious folks. I understand the land down near the road is pretty degraded, it's full of Scotch broom. Something needs to be done there, right? Can you?
We will definitely consider that. I'm very well aware. So
I am very, and have been for a long time, aware of the incredible emotional connection people have, especially to derailed. And absolutely, NKTA and EMBA, when we're trying to figure out how things lay out, as we have since 2007, have brought those guys to the table to try and plan together. Sometimes we can't do it, but we absolutely will try. Right, and it's in a great spot for that. So we'll absolutely bring those user groups and any other user groups that want to collaborate, we would bring them to the table. Absolutely, but I can't make a promise that everything's going to work out. But I can make a promise, as I already have to NKTA and EMBA, that we will always work with them and try to save the best of what we've already got.
And will there be access to that south end of the park? Is that now, I think the trail, that hyperspace?
So the question is, will there be access on the south part of this property because there is the hyperspace? Yeah. Well, it's a big piece of property. We're going to work hard to make all that happen. And so, but I gotta locate where the wetlands are. We need to locate the slopes. I can't lay it out until we have more environmental information. But if you want to be part of it, if you haven't shot us yet, you'll be part of it, and so will the trail groups. And that's how you plan. You can't tell until you get in there and see where slopes and trails and road approaches and all that stuff are. But there's a whole bunch of frontage there. And I would be really surprised if we couldn't find a dedicated access, even if it isn't the same one right there. Obviously, with parking. Oh, and we're already committed to giving parking to the county, because that's one location where we've already in writing said we're gonna give the county land for parking in that location. Yeah. All right, and tell me your name again. All right, good luck with the recovery. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. My name's Dave Coaster. I live in Kingston, right downtown, not far from the ferry. And my wife and I buy our Angus from an Angus rancher in Kingston. And we want to keep it that way. Sorry about that. What I said was I buy Angus from an Angus rancher right in Kingston, and that I want to keep it that way. It was said earlier that growth happens. And it does, because it's a series of decisions. It's not the wind, and it's not magic. It's what we do. And what we're planning on is changing law that we saw fit to lay in place many years ago. And that's a decision. It's not written in stone that we need to do this, and it's not written in stone that we need radium to give us a YMCA, as it was pointed out earlier. You guys backed out on a plan from 2019, and the truth of the matter is, you say you can't find other land. The bottom line is you can't find the land at the price you want. Radium's going to cut you a deal. And all they're going to do is redevelop our forest for us. It's property that has been in the hands of public resources since 1845, 187,000 acres by 1890. If you take a look right now on the plat maps, this is a question for all four of you. Did you know that the properties owned by Pope are already divided down to 20 acres, wherever they can, throughout the entire Olympic Peninsula? Is that the plan? Is that the growth we're going to see? Because it's a series of decisions just like this one here tonight.
Thank you.
Hi, David Wynn. First memory is Low Fall Dock. I lived at the, what was it, the waiting room there? So I've been around for a long time. Went to North Kitsap, went away, came back in 2005. But one thing that is a challenge for us, and I'm for this. I was a youth coach, coached baseball. I was with the Kingston High School Athletic Boosters. I was president for like ever. Retired in 19. And then came to the Rotary actually, because I wanted to do good for our community, and that's what the Rotary does. What I see is this is going to be a big challenge. How hard is this? And really, I haven't seen anything like this in all of Kitsap County. This is something that is like unique. I don't even know, is there anything even in the other counties? I mean, it's what a huge facility with lots of acreage of sports complex. I don't think I've seen anything like it.
I'm not aware of it. I'm not that aware of other facilities. I know my kids played a Starfire in Tukwila, and that was tucked in behind the mall. And I'm not aware of any developer trying to do a public-private partnership to do something like this. So, maybe we'll get the Darwin Award this year. That's always possible. So, anybody else want to comment on that? Okay, ma'am?
I don't think I'm old enough to be called ma'am, am I? Am I there?
Well, everybody says that.
Hey, I'm Jen Schultes. My husband Richard and I, we live in Kingston. Thanks for having forum and giving us an opportunity to speak to you. Just to tell you a little bit about myself. I work really, really hard. and I work really hard because the moment I'm done, I want to be out on those trails. But I want to make a really important point. As much as I love those trails do not equal conservation. It's two totally different things. And I love the trails, trust me. I was one of the people that was in the master planning phone calls, the Zoom calls that we all had during the lockdown, where everybody said, what is your biggest concern? I went back and I looked at the slides recently. Does anybody remember what the biggest concern of the people that were in the group? And I admit, it was a small subgroup, right? But it was a subgroup of people who cared enough to show up that day. It was conservation. That was people's biggest concern about the master plan. So I have some questions, and depending on what the answer to the first question is, will depend on what my next question is. Is this being proposed as the sports center, the land for the sports center? Are you selling the land, or is this a land lease?
So what I would say is if it all happens like it might be in my head right now, that is actually more of a gift and transfer.
Okay.
Gift is the wrong word. It would be a transfer for some public entity to own. No, and it would not be a lease.
A public entity, not a private entity?
I think it would be nice for the YMCA to own the ground under their building, but in terms of sports fields, I don't see any private entity that would probably go near that with a 10-foot pole. So it's just not appropriate for private enterprise, man.
I saw a GoFundMe or something like that, where the goal was $750,000 to be raised. I'm curious what that $750,000, this was put out on the Rotary page, but what is that $750,000 for? Because I think we know $750,000 is maybe enough to pay for the permits and the consultant fees, the architect, the engineering. Barely.
Like this whole process, we're in an exploratory period. So that's what it's looking for is at the time we first started, it was beginning to get money for the land and all of the studies it would take to make sure that land was appropriate. And so that's where we're at right now, but it's just like everyone else. We're at an exploratory period, and so far we spent maybe $2,000 coming up with some schematics and so forth.
Yeah.
but it is
I thought it was schematic. I looked at it.
for planning purposes, for planning purposes.
I'm just being bad up here. How much money, what's your range? How much money is this gonna cost? Who's gonna pay for it, and who's gonna, take care of the ongoing costs to take care of the fields, which apparently, I saw the photos, they're in deplorable condition. We're not taking care of them now. There must be a reason. Where's the money coming from?
Those are the school fields, but, right, it totally depends on where we put it. If we can have land that is given over to us to then turn over to a public entity after it's developed, then we'll be working on paying for the development costs for it, but not the management and not the maintenance. Okay?
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I just tell you just a quick story and I'm out of here. 15 years ago, my parents were looking for a retirement community, and they shopped around, and my dad was having mobility issues at the time. He had caught this terrible immune system disorder, which eventually took his life. And they went to one where they said, here are the plans. We're going to put in a saltwater pool, and that means that he would have been able to get in the water and do some activities that he was really limited on, and that was it. They were sold on it. 4 years later, my dad was dead. My mom's still there 15 years later. There's no saltwater pool. There's never going to be a saltwater pool there. I understand that Radiant is a business. Of course, it is. I don't begrudge you for wanting to develop this land. In fact, when you first acquired Industries, it was made really clear to us that there was a lot of it that was considered high better use. Yeah, basically, land you're going to develop. You're not going to get timber out of it because you want to get a lot of money out of it. And that's what a business does. And I don't begrudge them for asking, but I don't want it here. This is not a two-way door. This is not a two-way door when we develop this land. And I promise you, if anybody's thinking, oh, it's just one corner down there, it is absolutely going to change the fabric of that entire park. It is absolutely going to change it. And it will never be the same again. So I really like this.
Thank you for your comments and being courteous. Appreciate it. Ma'am? Are you out of order, ma'am? Are you a positive or a negative?
Beverly's only positive.
You're only positive. All right. All right.
Thank you. I'm Beverly Parsons from Hansville. And I actually have a question more for the Kingston Rotary folks. So the Growth Management Act and the comprehensive plan update that we're all involved in, and the county is involved in, is really focused on developing affordable housing and living in the UGA. So the Kingston UGA does not include this land. This is part of the rural area. So my question really is, we have just a lot of work to do to create affordable communities within the designated UGAs. And thinking specifically of Kingston in this case. And that affordable living situation is what is going to be important to support people with medium and low incomes. And my concern is that this project is distracting the community and the Kingston Rotary from the really, really challenging work of creating affordable living in the Kingston UGA. And so I'm wondering, from Mark and Chris, just how the Kingston Rotary and all of the rest of us who really are concerned about affordable living and affordable communities, how we can be sure that our energy is not being siphoned off from the difficult work that faces us in the Kingston UGA to help keep people focused on that hard work and not consuming our rural areas. It's a lot, so when you meet a big challenge, it's easy to say, oops, well, I'll just go over here and work on this. And so I'm really looking for how we can keep the focus on the UGA and the affordable living in the Kingston area.
Thank you for asking that, because that's a very, very, very important thing. Tomorrow at 4 o'clock, as a matter of fact, if you would like to come to the Village Green, we have a group of people that have been meeting for the last 3 years called the Affordable Housing Working Group. And I would welcome anyone here to come if you feel like it is something you'd like to work on. We have a number of things that we're looking at. It is not part of Rotary, but Rotarians are involved in lots of different things, and that's one of the groups that I happen to be involved in. And we are presently looking at least 2 or 3 different projects that we feel will actually bring affordable housing within the UGA. Again, 4 o'clock tomorrow, Village Green. Be good to see you.
Okay, thank you, Ben. So I assume there's nobody else from kind of a positive point of view, then we'll just keep going with the folks here.
Tina Smallbeck. I'm a teacher here at North Kitsap, and but my husband's family goes all the way back to the 1923 yearbook. Don't ask how I know. But we purchased land back in the late 90s because my in-laws owned it, but we researched what was happening at that time with growth management, and Paulsbo's plant, still hadn't been approved at that time, but we saw that it was eventually supposed to be part of the city of Paulsbo, which we understood that. And the Growth Management Act was put in place for a reason, and they mentioned the urban growth area earlier. I really don't understand, even after the explanation, why they're choosing to put that stuff where they're going to put it. I am at the top of Stottlemyre, and I've already seen the most massive increase in traffic in the last few years, and I cannot imagine how that's going to be okay. And maybe this is my question, one of them, with the wetlands that are in Mervang's old field, I don't know what it's called now, along Stottlemyre, and on the other side you have a working farm, and that will affect those things if you're, and I'm very opposed to doing any kind of change in the growth management of that area. We're on property, my kids love the outdoors, they're both here, they're both grown now and out of college, but they are both just dismayed at this whole. Have you gone to ask the property owners that are going to be affected by what's going to occur along Stottlemyre? Because more density, denser housing equals more crime, period. And that's a fact. That is a fact. I grew up in Tacoma, and that's what happened there. You have to be, I'm not against building houses. I'm against changing the zoning laws to do it.
Thank you, man. Go here.
Full disclosure, I'm a member of Rotary. I've been in and out of Kitsap County since 1980, I think. I helped build the Trident training facility up that way. So I'm recently back to Kingston. I live in Kingston. I'm interested in this project, not because I have children or grandchildren, just because I think it's a good idea. As far as where to build it, good question. Is this the right place? It appears to be. Well, I have some questions. So, who do you propose is going to own the 40 acres sports complex land?
You've had enough of time with this. So that's a good question, and it'll take probably at least a year or two to figure out. The choices are, you have to have a public entity own it. It has to be publicly owned. And the choices could be Kitsap County, who's already struggling, frankly, with all the open space that they now own. It could be a brand new park district. If a port wanted to own it, they could own
And so there has to be some sort of a public ownership involved, because it just doesn't fit for private. And we're gonna have to, if that can't get solved, that's a fatal flaw. That'll kill it.
That would be my perspective as well. So, public entity. There we go. That public entity, this plays into Kitsap County's commitment to develop public land. Is that correct?
The county, I can't say that I know the county's park comprehensive plan. I don't know. But something the county is doing is within the next year, they're going to be performing a market study to determine just how many fields and facilities are needed. Because it's not going to work to take a shot at the dark, and I think we need 3 soccer things and 5 football things. I mean, it has to be very prescriptive, or you'll miss the target and build the wrong things. So the county is going to be doing a market study within the next year. They said they're looking countywide, so I assume that, North Kitsap will be a focus for them. Just because they're studying it doesn't mean they've figured out how to pay for it. So, that's always the challenge. And to be honest with you, when you're trying to do something like a park or a field, there is more money for buying property and building property. The really hard part is how do you pay to keep it running? And if that wasn't the problem, the school district fields would all be in perfect condition. But that's the hard part. There's lots of grant money to buy and build. But there has to be a plan on how it gets operated so that it's operated responsibly. And guys, it just takes time. Nobody up here has a spreadsheet showing how it's going to work. All of this takes time. And so I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, thanks. So that goes to my next two questions. Radiant is going to do the planning for how the land is laid out and so forth. Who's actually going to build the sports fields?
Radiant will not build the sports fields. And so our relationship, and we have no formal pieces of paper. We have no contract with each other. We just have 3 groups that said they want to put their canoe in the water and go explore. That's it. That's all we got. No contracts. What I have offered to do, what Radiant has offered to do, is we're going to do kind of the overall environmental studies on that end of the property. So we're going to do that on our nickel. And then we've offered to do the basic conceptual planning to organize the property on what things go where. Then, at some point, we have to apply for a formal permit. And that's when the meter and the expenses really take off. And we do not have an agreement between us on how all that gets paid for. So that's a work in progress. But remember, we weren't sure we were going to move past this meeting. And so I was in no rush to, get a bunch of lawyers to spend a bunch of money if we're not going to move to another meeting. So all of this takes time, and none of it is certain. There's no certain outcome.
So my understanding is that YMCA will build the fields. Is that right? If we get the money, is that not correct, or how's that work?
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, again, like John just said, I haven't thought that far ahead, to be honest. And this is an exploration. And if the community doesn't want to why, we're not going to go there. So our step here is we met with Rotary and we were like, this could work as a partnership. So that part is where we're at. And so we're exploring what it will look like. That's it.
Okay, so who's going to operate the sports fields once they're built, whoever builds them?
So, just real quick on we do capital projects, okay, we have 2 field projects that are in process right now. One in Harbor and one in Summer. So we could build the fundraising structure to support that. I think the operational piece comes down to what John already mentioned, public entity. And, you know, because at that point, whoever takes over ownership, they can ask the YMCA to operate it, or they can bring in their own people. That's a big question.
Yeah, and we do have one model that we're currently involved in Gig Harbor. The city of Gig Harbor owns the fields, and we're raising the money to build it and maintain it. And that's, we don't own it, we get to use it, but so do 8,000 kids and families that need it desperately in Gig Harbor. So we took it on to operate it and maintain it.
And also to build it?
And to build it.
So are you looking at that model up here?
It's a possibility. Just because we are doing it now, we're learning, and it's been a heavy, heavy lift for us, to be honest. But we took it on because the need in the community, and to be honest, we were positioned to do it, because that's what we operate and maintain fields. We can do that. No one else was eager to step into that, so we took it. If I thought back and said, will I do it again? I'm not totally positive, but this is a case where it could work here.
I wanted to address an earlier point. You mentioned essentially the needs analysis. The county has a responsibility to produce every 8 years now what they call a PROS plans, a park recreation and open space plan. That is underway by a contractor. The county is issued a contract to have that PROS plan developed for them. And there will be a number of surveys of what facilities we have, surveys of what we need, and a gap analysis produced that will provide a lot of guidance about, do we need soccer fields, do we need pickleball fields, what do we got for football fields. That gap analysis, unfortunately, won't be available till next March under the current plan. But, a plug, like Chris did, currently on the county parks website, there is a survey, about 15 questions, where you can go through and designate what parks do you use, and a matrix, how often do you use them. Likewise, a matrix of what sports do you or your family participate in, and a precursor to the more formal survey of needs. I suspect there'll be several iterations of that in order to get something that's statistically valid. Because before we jump off this cliff, we gotta have a good needs analysis that demonstrates that the community both needs and wants this.
Okay, thanks, appreciate that. So, Rotary, Kitsap Rotary, North Kitsap, Kingston Rotary, it's a very small club. And we're sort of the third of this partnership, but I'm thinking that's not enough. I was looking at the way Paulsco did the PERC plan, and they had a steering committee, and there are lots of people involved, lots of entities. How do we get all these other entities and groups involved and put them together into a steering committee to actually make this go forward so we get the entire community involved? How does that happen?
So I can just use an example because there's no playbook here. There's just not a manual. We had that, if you guys were here last time, you saw the same meeting we had in 2007. We put signs up on the trailheads and we said, this company is going to exit out of North Kitsap. Do you want to talk together about doing something together? And I had no plan. And so we had a meeting like this, and people were really enthusiastic. So I went back to our board. I said, there's pretty good support there. The community looks like they're willing to work. And then, because if nobody showed up, there'd be no Port Campbell Forest. It would just be 20 acre lots. So the community spoke, and we listened, and we did something together. After that meeting, we put out a call to every organization we could find in what was then called a Yellow Pages. And I personally picked up the phone and I said, you want to work together to do something no other community has done. You want to do it or you don't want to be involved. 30 organizations, both tribes, Visit Kitsap Economic Development. I mean, people came together, and the idea was they were united. Because there is no way this group is going to get it done. If it even moves forward, or there's no way.
I agree with you on that. I have other questions, but these folks have questions too, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah? Or, sir? Steve? I can't keep track of you, man. Hi, Steve.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, here, switch.
Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Howard. I've lived in Kingston since 1989, so I know a little bit about the area. First, I have a question for all of you. How many of you drink well water on a daily basis? Okay, those of us without our hands in the air, you're wrong. Every drop of water that you drink falls in Kitsap County. We are surrounded by salt water. While I like the idea of the sports fields, my concerns are with the water question. The site is planned for an area listed by Kitsap County as critical aquifer recharge area. Taking away from the critical aquifer recharge area, given the increase in population that we are likely to see, takes water away from every mouth in here, potentially. Okay, that critical aquifer recharge area also gets 30 to 40 inches of water. For every square foot of impervious surface, that's 24.9 gallons a year. Doesn't sound like much, does it? For every parking spot, that's 3,100 plus gallons a year of wastewater. How are we going to deal with that much wastewater?
So,
It's your turn.
that is going to be one, if you were here last time, Steve,
I was.
you'll remember that from our point of view, what I said, the biggest challenge that we're going to have besides traffic is water quality leaving the site. And that Port Gamble Creek and Port Gamble Bay, have to be paramount in terms of maintaining their water quality. One thing about an aquifer recharge area is it's got lots of sand in it.
Right.
And so there's the potential to use septic systems and then what are called large on-site systems that treat the water before it goes in turquoise. So that's a possibility.
Okay. Lately, the Clear Creek area here in Kitsap County, in their 14 wells of their public utilities district, started finding PFAs. That's polyfluoroalkyls or acetals. Those are the forever chemicals. Once they're in the water, they don't come out. You have to find where it's coming from, and they haven't found it yet. That's another concern. Cars mark their turf. Those chemicals, plus what's in their treads, are potential sources of that. So we've got to be very careful about that. How do you filter that out? There's no known way that I know of.
I am not familiar with that. I don't know.
All right. Also, to get the water to the site, the drinking water and to take the water off the site, any other utilities that involve liquids, by conversing with the North Kitsap TUD there on Finn Hill, found out that the minimum per footage for pipe is 100 feet. It goes up not additionally, but by multiples if you cross wetlands, if you have changes in elevation, or you have to purchase a right-of-way, an easement from a private property owner, and God help you if it goes alongside a state highway, because then the state's involved, and we know they don't do nothing for free. Where's the money for all of this utilities work? And there will be an S-load of it. Where's it come from?
So for water's actually at the site right now.
Water's at the site.
So there's a PUD water main there. The rest of the money for the utilities is just like the money for the fields. So there's going to have to be a fundraising effort that will include grant applications. And that's not just for turf, that's for bathrooms, it's for power lines, it's for building an intersection. All of that is going to have to get financed. And we've identified some pots of money, but that doesn't mean we're going to get them.
Okay. Another concern is that once we get all the rest of the utilities there, if this comes to fruition, are we not just making it easier for further development from that point? Is this facility not going to do the heavy lifting for further property development?
We'll wait. I guess wait to see when there's a plan, and you can see if that's the case. If we do this clustering where we create the open space, that open space is forbidden from ever being developed into something else. So I don't think this launches a domino effect, across North Kitsap, but wait and see the plan. And Steve, I do want some other folks to be able to come up.
I understand. I was basically done, and thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
My name's Jessica Damilau. I live right next to Mark and Lynn Shorn. I'm Port Gamble Bay. I had no intention of getting up here today, but I just did want to talk to the need of these fields and facilities for these kids. I've got 4 kids from 9 to 17, play travel, baseball, travel, soccer, football, basketball, anything you can imagine. My team was the team that Clint talked about that was practicing on one half of the gym. I had 8 and 9-year-olds and a first grade team on the other side of an elementary school gym. It was impossible. Everywhere, there are facilities everywhere. We're going this weekend to Puyallup. Next weekend we'll be in Issaquah. We'll be in Redmond. I'm going to be in Portland. I mean, it's everywhere has facilities like this, and it is such an amazing thing for these kids that is needed, especially for kids in Kingston who aren't supported. My 17-year-old got 1 home game on his home baseball field. Like, that's not right. The school district is not going to do this. We need to do something for these kids. I mean, so really that's my only comment, and if this doesn't work out, please keep going. And I know it's not gonna, it most likely won't benefit my kids, maybe my 9-year-old, but there are kids in this community that deserve this, and I love the trails. I've used the trails since I moved here in 2004. I've seen how hard Mark and Lynn have worked to save the trails, and it's a beautiful, huge park that we have. I mean, I just, please, work hard for it. I just wanted a voice to be positive, because obviously there's a lot of negative stuff.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. Isabel Crump, and I recently retired as a substitute teacher in the school district, so I'm very aware and thankful for you trying to provide facilities for our youth. They need it. Before I moved up here in 2015, I left a high-paying job in law enforcement to become a teacher. So like I said, kids and the needs that they have to be involved in sports and activities, it's always been on my mind. However, I was a science teacher, and the reason I left law enforcement to become a teacher is because I was so passionate about the environment since my 20s. And I just got more and more frustrated that more wasn't being done. So while I'm very grateful of what you are trying to offer us, I would like to know from all of your groups, Rotary, YMCA, and your group too, what are your climate mitigation plans? Last week, 3 of the hottest days ever recorded globally occurred. I keep a horse, Painted Valley, it's a farm down the road. Since the clear cuts in the winter, all the water is coming down and it's flooding the fields there. I have friends down Minder, that area, that have farms, and there's so much water there since the trees been cut down. One of the projects when I was a teacher was to have my environmental science kids pick an area of the United States and write about the EPA's projections. Western Washington, warmer, drier summers, warmer, wetter winters, which is bad news for Seattle because they're not going to get their snow that they need. But for us, we're going to get more rain in the winter and we're going to have drier summers. So these are my concerns. I know we need a place for kids to go. And I'm not going to be a fool and pretend that population growth is suddenly going to stop. We need places for people to live. But like I say, for right now, I'd like to know what your different organizations are doing, whether it's just putting solar panels on your facilities or for you to give land to collect water, to leave parts of the land intact so that we can mitigate these problems.
I'll start. So Radiant is a really big multinational timberland owner. And since about 3 or 4 years ago, their investors have put pressure on our board of directors to be more proactive on climate change. And that's who boards of directors listen to. I mean, they don't listen to me that much. So, but that's who the boss is of the companies. It's people that own the company. And I think I mentioned at the last meeting, about 10 years ago, 5% of our investors were European. And Europeans are always way ahead of us on almost everything, including how they treat wastewater, how they build homes, how they use cross-laminated timber. They've been decades ahead of us. Our current ownership in Rayonier is 20% European now. And they are sending signals every year that we are expecting this company to step it up and figure out how to become more proactive in climate change. And that means carbon sequestration, considering longer rotations. One of the things the company does is if it has a real estate development and it takes 1,000 acres out, it's looking at buying 1,000 acres of pasture and replanting it and doing afforestation. So all of that's new, but I was just at a conference at the corporate headquarters, and all of this is taking place. So they do have very active demands from their bosses, which is the people that own the company. And this is, I mean, it's huge. It's absolutely game-changing. So, and then on a local level, we have to comply, this project, and every project has to comply with the U.S. Clean Water Act. And does the Clean Water Act solve every problem? It absolutely does not, but there is a standard. If we cluster, maybe we can get up to half of the land set aside to do things like fields and maybe things like continuing to have a forest there. So clustering and density, smaller units, is one technique people use to conserve land. And I know there's no Arborwood fans out here, but there's 750 people that thing's gonna house, and half of the project is gonna be open space. And that's an urban growth area. So clustering is one technique that the real estate industry has to conserve land. And that's the whole idea behind growth management. Growth management is a massive clustering ordinance. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
So anyways, those are the kinds of things that our company's involved in, and that by law we're gonna have to do here. If we can't produce decent water quality, either going into the ground or going into surface waters, then we're not gonna have a project. We're just not gonna be able to do it. Okay?
Just real quick, because I know that there's still some folks, we have over 2,500 households in this area, well, actually over 3,000 that are traveling to Hazelwood Family Y in Silverdale. If we put a YMCA up here, I imagine they're gonna go here and they're gonna be traveling a lot less. You know, I shared in the last presentation the things that we do from an environmental standpoint, our outdoor environmental education programs. We're educating over 10,000 kids every year on the benefits of habitat protection and sustainability. And our camps follow and show kids how to do this, not on a tablet, not on a phone, but out in the environment, growing an appreciation for nature and a respect for it. There are other things that we could share on this, but Charlie.
Yeah, just one of the biggest challenges that will be for this project is the cost of energy conservation. We're having to retrofit our buildings that, because there's an act that will be implemented on the state, I think it's 26, 27, but so we have standards that the state is very serious about that we have to meet. And so I know that how we design and build new facilities, and even our old ones, are gonna have to meet very high standards to save. This state is very conscious of that construction. So that's not gonna be easy then to build this building, because the cost of having energy savings is gonna be a big challenge. Because it's a big challenge for retrofitting some of our older buildings to meet those standards. So that's a cost. It's a good thing, but it's a cost.
Guys, one of the biggest ongoing increases in housing cost is the regular changes to the energy code. We're just living in a time where there are no easy decisions. Because affordable housing, this isn't a problem in Kingston, this is a problem in the entire country. There's 4 million homes short in the whole country. And when we tighten up the energy code, we move away from affordability, but we move towards more climate friendly. And we're just in a time when there's too many of us living here where there's no easy choices. It's either hard or harder. And I mean, that's what you get with 7 billion people. There's just too many. Not just here, everywhere. And there's just not easy choices. If somebody out there finds a better place for the Y, it is not going to break my heart. Not the Y, that will break my heart. That will crush my heart. The fields. If somebody knows a property owner and it's in a good location and the property owner owns some land where the environmental issues will be real simple or simpler, we don't need to do this together. I mean, go find the property and bring it. There's more of you than there are us. Go find the property and bring it to us. Go ahead.
I was going to say Rotary is an international organization. We have lots of partners that we support in foreign projects to do water conservation farming, recycling of water, clean water for places where they don't have it. If you look at our international projects, we're just a big supporter of those types of things. Locally, one of the advantages of this center of North Kitsap location is that it is going to be adjacent to a Kitsap Transit park and ride lot. So we look forward to having public transit that will get people to this spot as an alternative to everybody driving their own vehicle. And the other piece is that on the question about watering grass, we haven't made a decision yet of whether we'll use artificial turf that doesn't require watering or whether we'll use natural turf so that we can recharge the aquifer. So those things are, in our mind, just like yours, we'll be paying attention, evaluating the best data we can get, and making logical decisions.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Beth Berglund, and I'm on the Kingston Community Advisory Council in Kingston. And I just spent the last year working on the comp plan update with a whole team of people. And so I've been kind of immersed in the Growth Management Act kind of space, which I do not recommend. But one thing I learned working through that is one of the principles of the Growth Management Act is that you want to concentrate density in small areas. And that's where you provide your urban services, and that's where you provide your transit hubs, and that's where you invest in sidewalks and streetlights and all the things that people like in towns. What we're doing here, so let me just get back up a minute, because a lot of you probably don't know where the boundaries. The boundary on 104 of the Kingston urban growth area is Lindvog. So that's where Kingston stops in terms of being an urban growth area. Then we have what's called a Lammard, which is at George's Corner. That's where the Safeway and the Tribal gas station is, and the Rite Aid. And that's kind of a, Lammard is a local area of intense development. And so it's kind of an exception to the UGA rule. And so that Lammard is something you also want to minimize. You want to keep it small. You want to accept that, yeah, that stuff's happened, but it's not really meant to be outside the UGA. So it's kind of like an exception to the rule. And the distance between Lindvog and the George's Corner Lammard is about 2.5 miles. And then the distance from the George's Corner Lammard to what we're talking about here for the sports project is another 2.5 miles. So in effect, you're gonna create a dynamic for 5 miles of sprawl down 104, where suddenly Kingston's gonna be like one big strip of an area. And that's exactly contrary to what the Growth Management Act tries to do. I'm a rule follower, so I'm taking that seriously, and I just don't think it's in the spirit or the letter of the law to do what we're doing here. This level of intense investment and development belongs in a UGA. The YMCAs belong in towns. They belong in the urban areas so that people can walk to them. They can take buses to them. They can get the least among us, who don't have their own cars and need fitness the most for their health. They're going to be living in those affordable housing units in the UGAs. They need to be like in the walking distance or the biking distance of that YMCA. Putting it on the country and making a hub and spoke kind of model, it was very effective logically to think about putting this equidistant from Suquamish and Indianola and Kingston and Hansville and Paulsbo, but it is exactly contrary to how Growth Management Act asks us to think about design. And it's just an invitation for Kingston to become just one blur to all the way to Paulsbo. And we don't want that. So again, I'll be the 7th or 8th person to say this. We need fields. The kids need fields for their club sports. But don't ask the rural part of our community to provide facilities for non-rural activities. I mean, not that the rural kids aren't playing in the club sports, but we have the trails, and we have the beaches, and we have the natural spaces. That's our recreation in the rural area. And we have the mountain bike trails, and that's our recreation. YMCAs and sports fields that might have AstroTurf or require big lawns that have to be turf lawns that have to be watered, that's a town and a city kind of infrastructure. And it really doesn't belong where it is. It seems very practical to think about this project the way you guys have, and so it makes perfect sense that you do it. But let's remind ourselves like what the laws ask us to do to make for smart design so that we don't have a permanent scar into our natural space here in the rural parks. And I will say, I would encourage the team who considers to explore this project to think about one project that identifies decentralized locations for fields. And it's one project, but it's not one location. And I just encourage you to consider that possibility and probably negotiate with the county for some way to make that reasonable so that you're not having 20 permits or 10 permits. You have one permit for one project, different locations. I know that's probably unconventional, but Christine Rolfus is our new county commissioner, and if anybody can do it, she can do it. And she can figure it out. So I'd encourage you to think differently and be creative, and that's just my thoughts and recommendations.
I'm not affiliated with any, I'm just a neighbor. I'm a neighbor that I can stand out on my back porch, and there it is. There's the land in question. My husband and I run a animal sanctuary and rescue. I wasn't at the last meeting. I was rescuing 3 starving horses and a llama that was starving. We had to carry her onto the horse trailer, and she had a baby. She was so skinny, I didn't think she'd make it home. She gave birth in the horse trailer on the way home. This is in my rural neighborhood. Let me step back a little bit. Do y'all live in the proximity of this park? Where do you live, John? Are you in Bainbridge?
I live in Bainbridge.
Okay. You all live close to YMCA? No? You live?
I live in Ritter Lane, right above
Really? Yeah. Yeah, you gotta drive down it.
I live in Kingston.
Okay. Okay. Well, you would know that, I mean, I never, so I'm the grandma at our 4-H club. There is a 4-H club that is in Kingston, and I have 7 little kids that we call them the horseless horsemen. They want horses, but the hardcore 4-H people that usually house these horses for the little kids hightail it out of here a few years ago. 2 sides of my property is landlocked with, well, when it was Pope and Talbot, they actually were going to give me a few more acres because we handicapped kids come to us to ride horses, and I was a kindergarten teacher. I love horses. Like I said, I wasn't at the last meeting, but I love kids. I just don't understand. We used to ride on trails. I form a 4-H trail. These are kids in our in our area. We can't go on the trails anymore. We've got bicyclists that come 40,000 miles fast behind you and scare the hell out of my horses. So that's happened. Even runners, they don't give a crap about horses. I'm the old area. Build a barn up there. You build a barn over there for handicapped children. I'll bring the horses and I'll run it. And I saw you kind of, with the last, you kind of laughed like there's somebody right here that's on your side clearly. And somebody said something and you kind of laughed at him like, I don't think it's fair. I mean, I just don't, unless you turn right there on Linder to go home, which you 3 don't. Got you. You follow that. You know Bond Road. This is nuts. This is nuts. It really is. You don't have to build a barn, and anybody that has friends and children that are handicapped, I take them for free. And like I said, I got that string of, we have a different name of it, string of pearls coming right through the front of my piece of property. It's a string of crap. All right.
I know I look ridiculous, and I guess rule number one is you can't show up to an 80-degree auditorium dressed like a black bear and then complain about the heat, but I know we are all suffering. My name is Laura Finster. I am a nurse and a mom, and like a lot of nurses and moms, I like to run in the woods because it keeps me happy. And being happy keeps me good at those two jobs. So everything that Brooke Hammett said about peace and the solitude in the woods, I don't know, I think that sounds fluffy, and some people are built a little bit less fluffy than others. But I can't really emphasize enough how important that is to a lot of people here in Kitsap. My real concern, though, is about precedent, and I worry, I'm from the East Coast, and I don't know if you've ever been out east. It is a megalopolis, it's city into city into city. But we do have green spaces, and the only reason that we had green spaces like Rock Creek Park around DC is because of zoning and because of really intentional management of growth, because the counties put their foot down and said, we need this space for our wildlife, we need a corridor for things to move in, and we need a place for people to get out and breathe where it's quiet so that they can think. I also think about, you guys are a timber company, right? And there's no incentive for sustainable timber industry if a company, if investors and developers can come into a community, into a rural area, buy up land for pennies because it's working for us, clear cut it, say, look at this ugly land, there's nothing on it, and then rezone it for industry. There's no incentive for sustainable forestry practices. So what is the precedent that we're setting as a community with a ton of working forest? How much development do we really want? And how much are we willing to fight for the zoning that's going to protect these green spaces?
Thank you. So guys, it's 8 o'clock, so we have time for 2 more, and then the school district needs us to start moving out of the building.
My name is Alia Pirzada, and I live up on Sawdust Hill Road. I'm one of the founding members of our Forest Fund, along with Lynn Shorn and Kim Greenwood. And we're the ones who saved 756 acres of trees, so you know where our heart is. I want to add my voice to the gentleman who talked about the water. I looked up a few things. In the state of Washington, the average person uses 110 gallons of water a day. So that works out to 40,140 gallons per person per year. So if you have 21 houses, which is what your 420 acres would be, what you're legally allowed to put on there, that is 372,600 gallons a year. If you change that to 1 house and 5, which is what he's proposing, that becomes 13,490,400 gallons a year. That is basically 10 million gallons more per year. And that's assuming you've got 4 people to a household. Then I don't know how much water it takes to water fields. And I don't know how much water the YMCA uses. Probably a lot. You've got lots of showers and things. I don't know. But there's all that water coming in, there's all that effluent going out. And I don't think that when our wells start to go dry, that Rainier or the Y or Kitsap County is going to help us drill deeper or find water from somewhere. So I really think we need to think very carefully how many houses we're putting in places. If we're going to increase the density like that, last time, you sort of made it sound like we were NIMBY because we want to live in a rural area. We bought in a rural area because we want to live in a rural area. And it's not being NIMBY to want to protect that. Another thing that I was thinking about, sorry to ramble, is the light. If you have lighted fields there, that light is going to disturb the wildlife which is in the park. And also, we should remember that the land that we're talking about is not part of the Port Gamble Park. The Port Gamble Park is safe from development. And if Rainier really wants to increase their carbon sequestration and they're looking for projects. I know about 1,100 acres of trees that we would love to have you give us the timber rights to, and you can write it off. That'd be a great donation.
Okay, this will be our last speaker.
Sorry, I'm really anxious. I actually am a recent transplant to the area. I came up with my husband, whose family has been up here for over 30 years as contractors, building the village green and working with the Rotary Group to make Kingston and Hansville and Port Gamble the place that we all love that it is, a green place that we can all go and enjoy, a green place where we can all go and cool down. And I say that I'm a transplant because I was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I have personally watched over my 30 years of existence what happens when we don't value the natural spaces that are adjacent to us. It's one little code that gets moved, or one little line that gets bumped, or an embankment that was 15 feet that gets turned into 10. And then horrible things like heat islands start to happen because you pave everything in. You want to have water conscientiousness and you want to have conservation of water, so you want to put in turf. But turf is just hot. It's not good to the animals. It's not good to the air. The UV, as much as we'd like to think that it's so cloudy up here in Washington, it still destroys everything and it leaks down into the water table. And a lot of people here were talking about the water table and how much that matters. I remember Las Vegas, Nevada being a green place. I remember when the Las Vegas city actually had wetlands that had animals, and we didn't have problems with things catching fire and smelling like fetid garbage. And seeing how fast that can happen with people that always think, oh, well, the next person after me can think about it. I didn't think at first that it was ever going to be something that was going to impact my life until I had my son 7 years ago. And the impact to the environment was so much that children just can be so negatively hit by the heat and be prepared for it. I mean, obviously, desert people are prepared for the heat, right? Until you watch your own infant have a febrile heat-related seizure in your car, and there's nothing that you can do. And that's in a place where everybody's got air conditioning. In the time that I've been here, I've met so many wonderful locals that talk about going to the beaches, about going on the trails, about going and seeing everything that is one of the last beautiful bastions that this country has to offer. And I hear people complain about how hot it is. And we have statistics that show that you've got 3 of the hottest days that the planet has seen. And that's only going to get worse the more we put in concrete jungles and buildings. And yes, we do have to account for increases in population, but it needs to be controlled, and it needs to be firm, and it needs to be something that we don't allow those little tiny inches that we give thinking about ourselves until it's a mile, like everyone else was saying, and you've got that 5 miles between that Lindvog all the way out to the Rite Aid. And could you imagine? I know it's difficult for all of us. We don't want to drive into Paulsville. We don't want to drive to Silverdale. We don't want to go places for the things that we want to use. But can a bear hop in a car? Can a cougar? And I mean, the easements are the things that matter, because we don't like to think that we create a lot of disruption, but we do. Stop and think about the last time you went to some place and you didn't see trash. The last time you went someplace expecting there to be 1,000,000 frogs and there was one little lonely ribbit. A place where you remember there being all kinds of lightning bugs or fireflies, or being able to have all kinds of fishing trips with family. And those things are the things that we'll lose. And we'll lose them before we know that they're gone. I came up here to have my daughter so that she could have a green place, and not have to worry about what it would be like, again, to watch another child have a seizure in front of me, just because the environment wasn't as forgiving. And we have the opportunity to be forgiving to our environment. We have the opportunity to say, I'm not ready to lose the green spaces that we do have, because that's what Washington is. It's one of the last rainforests that our country has. And we shouldn't let it get broken before we know how it even works. That's what we did to the Everglades, and those are gone, and I'm sure that's something that you guys can speak to as a company from Florida, if anybody here knows. You don't. I never got to see the Everglades before they were ruined, and I know my kids won't either. And if we keep pushing into the natural spaces, we're just going to keep losing them. And on that note, I hope everybody has a wonderful night.
So, Rotary or YMCA, do you guys have any last comments you'd like to make?
Oh.
Okay.
My name is Chris Libby. I live in Kingston. I'm a Rotarian. I'm a mother. I guess I'm a wife first. I'm a mother, a grandmother, and I'm a retired pediatric nurse. My plea to you is we need to take care of our children. And this sports complex is something that we need. We need the forests. I walk the trails all the time. I am not against the environment. But first and foremost, we need to take care of our children, because if we don't take care of them now, while they are young, they are not going to be able to take care of you when you're old. So I just really feel that we can take care of the animals, we can take care of the trees, we can take care of our environment, we can do what we can do for our climate, but if we don't take care of our children first, it's not going to matter.
All right, this gentleman will wrap us up.
I just have one question. Is the rezone, are you guys pursuing the rezone whether or not you go through with the YMCA and the Rotary thing? Okay, so that tells you everything you need to know.
So the question was, are we pursuing the rezone with or without these organizations? And the answer is yes. Yeah. I'm sorry? No, just this block. Because of its location. No, and I'm sorry, I'm not, we're wrapped up. So, did you guys okay? So, we are going to go do the studies. We will not have another meeting until sometime in the fall. And I just would like to express my thanks for how people participated. I really do appreciate, constructive conversation. I never look down on people who want to protect what they have or are worried about projects like ours. More power to you. You should say what you think. And we welcome the chance to keep the dialogue going. So have a good night.